In-housing is not a new trend, but when one of the country's biggest and longest running advertisers decides to bring all of its advertising capabilities, talent, and the entire creative machinery in-house, it makes an impact and causes jitters in the entire agency ecosystem. So why did Godrej Consumer Products decide to set up an internal advertising agency called the Lightbox? How is having an internal in-house agency helping the organization as compared to external advertising firms? What are the implications for the agency ecosystem? I'm Delshad Irani, and on this episode of Media Dialogues with Storyboard18, we have Sudhir Sitapati, MD and CEO of Godrej Consumer Products, and the company's Chief Marketing Officer, Ashwin Moorthy, to give us a proper insight into what they aim to achieve with their in-house agency and how. Welcome to CNBC-TV18, Sudhir. Ashwin, it's lovely to have you on the show.
Hi, Delshad. Great to meet you.
And we're here to talk about something very exciting that's happening at GCPL. You all set up your own in-house agency that is essentially, churning out all this great work for brands, not just in India, but GCPL brands all over the world. But let me rewind first. Let me just go back to the point. Sudhir, I'll come to you first. Let me go back to the point where you were pitched the idea, perhaps, of setting up an in-house ad agency, especially given your background, of course, working on so many iconic brands in your previous stints as well, and working with so many iconic agencies. What went through your mind? Let's just rewind to that point about the actual pitch about the setup.
Yeah, no, I mean, the idea didn't come up at one point of time. It wasn't a eureka moment or anything. But when I joined GCPL, before I joined GCPL, I was always very impressed with the packaging and design of GCPL products. I found Godrej Air, the twist in the car, a beautifully designed product. I found Synthol packaging iconic. So when I came in, one of the things that's always struck me about GCPL, and I realized for the last decade, GCPL had in-housed design and packaging. It was something that most companies outsource and do. And I was very curious to see, what were the advantages of it. And there were a couple of big advantages, which is that the design and packaging team had continuity. They had enormous consumer connectivity. And they were very close to the people who were running the brand. And that's why GCPL was able to come up with what I thought before I came in, very, very good quality packaging and design.
So I guess as a competitor, you saw the products and you were
I mean, as I came in, I certainly liked GCPL packaging very much. So then obviously the thought started coming in saying, if we can in-house packaging design, how difficult is it to take the next step forward in in-house advertising? So I guess that's how step by step things move. I mean, the other point was that when we set up an internal marketing team, an advertising team, we had a gentleman called Tom Dawes, who's based in London, and Tom was one of the founders of Be Blunt. And he's one of the unique guys who's both strategic and creative. And I told him, listen, Tom, I know you're strategic and creative, but your job here is strategic. But I think he wasn't able to, he was not able to hold back his creativity. And I saw him really participating creatively in some of the early ads. And then I said, look, we've got a leader who's both creative and strategic. So why not then build a team under him and see where it takes us?
And that was, what, 9 months ago?
I think we launched Lightbox on April 1st. We've been thinking about it roughly for a year. I kind of asked Tom to say, hey, what do you think of this idea? He said, good idea. Let's do it on a quarter of our brands. And he made a presentation. And I said, why do a quarter? Just do it on everything.
Ashwin, let me ask you, as the CMO of the company, again, your thought process on, what prompted you to, come on this journey and set up an internal agency. And then we'll, of course, get into how you do it. But what was the thought process, given, again, your experience working with so many brands, so many agencies?
I think the one big shift I've seen is the level of collaboration is higher. The level of challenge is also quite high, I think, because when you have an in-house advertising team or a creative team, their ability to challenge briefs is a lot more because they're not in the sense worried about you as a business. They're worried about the brand as an objective. And what I found
skin
is
in the game in a sense.
It's about skin in the game. It's also about security. It's also about being quite secure in kind of challenging the marketing task, really getting deep into consumers. And one particular case we've had quite recently was where a person who is a copywriter wasn't quite happy with the brief, and she went and met consumers herself, and she got a better insight resulting in great advertising. So I think the lines of servicing, planning, brand management and creativity are beginning to blur a bit, and there are creative people who are also, like Tom is one of those cases, but we find exceptional people who are able to translate marketing to creativity, and they find I think a more secure way to do it when they're closer to the brand.
What do you sort of aim to achieve? I mean, are you setting the same sort of targets, benchmarks like you did with your agencies? What is the mandate of it? What have you told your people, the people actually sort of sitting there and tinkering with brands and creating all this work?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question you asked, Delshad. The mandate with Tom and the Lightbox team is actually business growth. It's slightly different. In paper, it is with a lot of agencies, but in paper, what we evaluate agencies often on is quality of advertising as measured by ABC. But when you have, Tom has brand managers reporting to him as well on advertising. So it's a full-fledged team, and he's not responsible for only quality of advertising. So his biggest mandate is market share and business growth. So that is, again, a pretty fundamental shift in, that wasn't something we had thought of before, but as we in-housed it and we said, okay, Tom, what's your goal? And I said, no, Tom, your objective is to grow this business and to grow market shares. So that's really how we did it. I think we set it up quite interestingly, Delshad. One of the good things, and being in Bombay is a bit of a global mecca of advertising. So while we are an advertising agency, so one has to think of Lightbox as an advertising agency owned by GCPL 100%. Right. So it's been pretty cool getting talent in, and this is talent that we had in the design studio, but I spoke to some of the people whom I've worked with in advertising and really admired, and I asked them, hey, who are the best guys you worked with in advertising? And I got two names, which is Shalini, who I've myself worked with in the past, and Gaurav, who I haven't. And we got Shalini and Gaurav as the two CCDs or creative heads of the business. And then once we had two, we had Tom, we had Gaurav and Shalini, and then kind of the agency structure. So now we have client servicing, we have a studio, we have an in-house photographer, we have art designers, and the planner and brand manager we've morphed into one.
Okay.
Which is, of course, the business brand managers sit with Ashwin, but the brand development, many of the guys, not all of them, but many of the guys who write the briefs, are also, so there's no planner brand. And one of the things I did find in my earlier job is that between planners and brand managers, there was a lot of intersection.
One thing with in-housing, and part of the debate was people say against in-housing, implied that then talent doesn't get too much room for creativity, and you're in this corporate structure. So I mean, all those arguments, when you sort of put it together, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you sort of nullify some of those arguments?
No, I think it's a great question, and it probably comes down to culture and scope. I think the culture that we have here is quite an open one. We value creativity. We're willing to take risks on some of our brands. And I think that's helped the Lightbox team also settle in, because they do come from a culture outside of, let's say, the client culture. The agency culture is a bit different. So I think one is making the cultures adaptable to kind of work with both environments. And I think the second thing that's worked really well for us is the palette that we offer. I think that we're in an advanced situation where we have global mandates, where a person works not just on one category specifically, but also works cross categories. So I think that keeps the creative mind tickled, where there is sort of breadth of challenge as well.
Slightly personal question. What were some of the reactions you got when you sort of told them that this is what one of the largest advertisers in the country is doing, in-housing advertising and setting up its own agency in-house? I'm sure, I mean, eyebrows were raised. Your LinkedIn post on it got, of course, a lot of attention. What were some of the reactions you got?
No, I mean, look, I think it was broadly a bit of an wow. So some of the new age companies do it, but a regular big FMCG. But I think that one question obviously was keeping creative talent engaged, right? So that was a question. But I think a lot of people did say that, look, and a lot of people in the agency feel that the agency model needs change. It needs to respond a little bit more to the new world that we're living in. And this is certainly an interesting way. By the way, many great companies started off with in-housing agencies and then they outsourced it. Lintas itself is actually Lever International, right? So then, so there's a clock that's not unique. I mean, it's been done 100 years ago. So a lot of people did see it as a question, because the objective is to get creativity its due. It's not to get a structure its due. So when you're experimenting with a structure, certainly a lot of people in the agency were quite excited, and they felt, so I think it was mixed, but that's how it was.
Mixed bag of reaction, of course.
Mixed bag of reaction.
Yeah. Some jitters maybe, like
I myself, we ourselves, at least when we're talking about it now 6 months down the line, we launched on April 1st. We kind of soft launched it 5-6 months before that. We hired the team, so we were kind of working. But now we having seen the body of work, we feel now confident that we were, and less important, but important was the cost savings that we were getting, which was substantial. There are substantial cost savings. So combination, and 80% is the quality of work and 20% is the savings banked in, gives us confidence that certainly there's something to this.
What was sort of the money guzzling spaces in your previous ways of working?
I think it comes down to, so obviously what you do save on are things like, let's say, agency overheads, because you have share overheads. The team sits within, our team itself, and so overheads are shared. Secondly, as Sudhir was saying, roles are merged. So when you have brand managerial talent, which also does strategic planning, you don't need planning talent. When teams are sitting together, you don't need servicing. So, for example, and going back to culture, the way we work is the copywriter sits in the same meeting as Sudhir does. Whereas in agency system, you would have 8 people, and they've got a lot more sort of, kind of processes between the brief and the kind of the approver of the script and the writer of the script. So I think it's just about a mandate of this size is run with creative talent, and brand managers share responsibility of servicing. And I think that results in the structure being a lot sort of leaner and hence by design less costly.
Absolutely.
One thing, Delshad, is the sort of technology revolution over the last 20 years has opened up many ways in which companies can radically reduce overheads by having very, very talented people. So very talented people plus technology can mean much lower overheads. I think COVID has also made us bolder in the use of technology and made us imagine. So I think there is something about the whole 2 years that we managed with so little overheads on what is the role of overheads and what is the role of talent. So that's been the fundamental shift as well. So this has happened with a combination of things, and certainly that's been a big reduction, which is very, very few people, but very, very talented, can work with very low overheads and high technology to deliver great output at much lower costs.
Coming back to the work quickly, Sudhir, and also because you mentioned, the focus on the business impact and not just sort of the creative piece or something that you're looking at from the creative lens only. Tell me 1 or 2 examples of work that you perhaps want to, that's the direction you want to go in. You shared a showreel, of course. But tell me, how did that check all your boxes in terms of creativity, business impact? Are you seeing business impact already?
No, we are definitely seeing business impact on many of our categories, which is why it's given us a lot of confidence. We have seen the most business impact in a brand which is GODREJ'S, which is pretty much an in-house designed idea, which has had explosive growth on the back of great communication. And it is based on this insight that and it's a lot of this is insight that we co-create, which is people use the air care product for the first time when guests come home. And our insight was that when guests come home and your back is turned, they gossip about you. So guests gossiping was the big idea, and we have these sort of characters, which is talking rooms, where various characters are bitching about the smell in the room. And that has been a campaign that has been super hardworking. It's been exceptional results for us. That's been the most clear and tangible results. 2 other creative breakthroughs that we've had are on magic. We've had some really great creative work, also very good results. We have also had good results, which the second ad that we've done, we're even happier with on Good Night, where we're using this idea of trying dads. And basically the insight on Good Night is mothers are as concerned about mosquitoes as they are about the safety of the machine. And we had this sort of idea of a sleeping baby allows a baby to sleep, but we kind of replaced the mother with a trying dad. And so, trying dad was the idea here. So 3 good examples of all very powerful, I think clutter breaking, very insightful, consistent communication. We're big believers in in having big ideas and big ideas. You need to have big ideas and consistency, and that's what builds brands, you know. So
enduring brands, right?
enduring
And
brands.
Godrej is a prime example of that, of course, running for over a century. Do you see a fundamental difference in the way you interact with your teams? I mean, or they interact with you, of course, as leadership, you know, for maybe in a previous sort of setup and model or way of working, you wouldn't have had that kind of, you know, security or freedom of speech, so to speak. Quick thoughts?
Creative person takes the ownership of the brief and basically doesn't like it and says, here's an insight, and comes up with it, and that's an example. I'll give you another example of the Goodnight ad that we were just talking about. We had an ad which we were going to air, which was a simple script actually, which is a father, and we had this idea of trying dads and, you know, all the strategic stuff. So his dad is basically sleeping with a baby and just put the baby to sleep, and then sees that the Goodnight is not turned on, and it's a wooden floorboard. And the dad, when he walks on the wooden floorboard to switch it on, it creaks. And he walks and walks and walks, and finally, very on tiptoes, and switches it on. It was a really sweet ad. We really liked it. We were about to shoot it when I met Gaurav somewhere, and he was saying, you know, Sudhir, we have a really good idea, which is about a dad who fails. You know, this is about, and you see, you know, I think Gaurav, who's the other guy, he's just become a dad. He says, look, I really feel guilty every time, you know, I come back from work, my kid's gone to sleep. I put in the effort as a dad, but sometimes I just fail as a dad. And then, you know, when we heard it, and Tom was there, and we all heard it, we said, look, this is a really cute ad, walking, creaking, but this is a more powerful ad. Now, in the agency model, I cannot imagine the creative having access to this. There are just so many people between a creative and a CEO, right? So many people having views. Here, it's just 2-3 people. So this is an example of a creative person going and getting an insight, and here's a person of someone breaking the layers and saying, look, I have a bold idea, and which is what I wrote about in that, is it progressive, is it regressive, right? Is a dad who fails and a mother who succeeds. Is it a progressive idea, is it regressive, right?
Talking about it, and you seem very hands-on when it comes to sort of the creative aspect of building your brands. Is that something you particularly enjoy?
I do.
I mean, given, of course, you know, your experience working on iconic brands.
One of the things I'd like to do is, very often in some of the brands, in the very first ad, I like to get involved, because that's what we call the communication idea, the BCI, the brand communication idea. Because once the first ad is great, the second and third follow people. So because, you know, I enjoy getting into advertising, but I have to limit the time I spend. So I'd certainly get involved in the first one. This one was, I had got involved in the first one on Goodnight, and I wasn't involved in the creaking one actually. But this one, it just happened. And you see, the good thing is nobody feels, it's such a small organization, a small group of people, there's no insecurity. You know, there's Gaurav, there was Tom, and I said, hey, Tom, this is a great idea. You know, why don't we be bold and let's just push the brand a little bit more. So, yeah.
Fresh perspective.
And, you know, sometimes the level of risk that you can take, often, you know, I can take certain risks that some others may or may not be able to, and certain risks don't reach you, right? So, this allows for that, and you know, with 25 years of advertising experience, one can then do that.
Yeah, and of course, the proximity is a huge sort of play here. But because you mentioned, of course, in-housing is certainly not a new trend. Of course, very hotly debated over the years. The agency system, agencies are in a sort of existential crisis right now. So many factors, technology, marketers changing their outlook on, you know, what they expect from their agency partners. So the entire model of client and agency relationship is, of course, evolving. I was, of course, talking to Britannia the other day, and they have multiple agencies on board, and they work with a lot of partners. And you've, of course, gone the other way. And because you mentioned that this is not new, levers, of course, lintas, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see the end of, you know, the ways that were working earlier, one agency that you work with, external partner, versus now either you're in-housing entirely or you have lots of partners?
I don't know.
Just a general, what's your sense?
I mean, I don't know what the prognosis of the future is. I do know that creativity has to trump. This is a business of creativity. And whatever is the best model for creativity to succeed, that is the model that will succeed. I don't know what is the right model for creativity to succeed, But I do know that finally creativity will find a way. See, over the last 20 years, if you look at media agencies and advertising agencies, there's been a very, very wide divergence in marketing muscle between the two. So I mean, I personally feel that creativity is that zing that brings, makes brands special. And I don't know what model will allow for it. Certainly creativity is the opposite of bureaucracy. So whatever model, I don't know whether the in-house model is more bureaucracy or less bureaucracy, but whatever cuts bureaucracy and encourages creativity will win in the long run. And we're open, by the way. I mean, it's not whether we want to insource or outsource. We just want the best way for creativity to win.
Ashwin, any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, like in the old ways, there was a time when creativity was an add-on service and you'd make money only through media. So I don't know if those old ways are back again, but I also think that creative agencies, the way their remuneration model works, it's a lot of impetus on activity. And actually what you're really looking for is one or two big, bold creative ideas that the brand sort of galvanizes beyond.
And in terms of your overall marketing spends, how has that changed? Has it gone up? Of course, with the acquisition of brands like Park Avenue now and Kama Sutra. How are you seeing your marketing spends evolve?
2 years ago, we spent about, as GCPL globally, at 80% of what we spent was India. But globally, we spent ballpark of 500 crores. This year, we'll spend ballpark of 1,000 crores. So in 2 years' time, we have fundamentally doubled our media spends.
Right.
And it's a big, big increase.
Right.
We're also kind of, FMCG, the lifeblood of FMCG is advertising and marketing. So it's the heart of our business.
Yeah, and you have all this blood now in-house, right?
Yes.
And one last question, where do you hope to see, it's been 8 months now since Lightbox was set up. Where do you hope to see it in another 8 or 9 months, say? What do you, more work? How are you taking it to the next level? Any thoughts, any plans that you have in the works? Or you're just going to see how it's working right now?
No, I think we're very happy with the last 8-9 months, and we just hope that great brands take time to build. Often we celebrate individual pieces of creative work, but it is multi-years of great work that make great brands. And for me, that is the important thing, that we are strategic and creative at the same time in Lightbox. And over a multi-year period, our brands, have meaning to consumers, which are powerful.
Your point about consistency.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sudhir. Ashwin, it was lovely chatting with you and looking forward to see more work out of Lightbox.
Thank you, Delshad.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.